A small wooden box had caused a huge commotion. That's what the president of our neighborhood association shouted into the phone when she called the police about my wife, Grace, carrying a mysterious box into our new house. The HOA president, Margaret, wanted the whole neighborhood to see my wife get hauled away by the cops, as if she were some kind of criminal. It wasn't long before sirens were blaring, and people were already pulling out their phones, eager to catch the drama. Margaret stood there, arms crossed, smirking like she'd finally caught someone red-handed. But when the sheriff arrived and looked at the box, Margaret's smirk quickly faded. That was when I first realized that moving to Cedar Hill Grove might involve a lot more than we had expected. Grace and I had just wanted to start over. New house, new town, no old baggage. Just quiet streets, well-kept lawns, and a simple suburban dream that the HOA promised. Instead, we met Margaret, the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, before we even finished unloading the moving truck. Margaret had barely taken a step when Grace picked up the box. It was a big, weathered wooden thing with the word Valor carved into the side. Inside, Grace had some old military medals and a folded flag. Margaret immediately demanded, "What's in that box?" and actually reached for it as if it were hers. Grace, cool as a glacier, didn't say a word. She just locked eyes with Margaret, and I could see the surprise in Margaret's face. She wasn't used to being ignored, and it made her angry. "I'm Margaret Lawrence, president of the Homeowners Association," she said, as if she were announcing royalty. "Your truck is blocking the sidewalk, and it's embarrassing to see residents moving their own things." I wanted to laugh and scream at the same time. Then she played the military card. "My late husband was a colonel in the Army," she said, chin raised. "I know how military folks are. They need discipline. Your wife seems soft." I almost felt bad for her, trying so hard to impress us. Grace just stood there, silent, like she was reading Margaret's script and knew exactly how it would end. I stepped in, introduced myself, and promised we'd move the truck. But Margaret wasn't satisfied. Her eyes kept darting to the box, like she was hunting for something suspicious. "That better not be against our community guidelines," she warned. It was clear she was looking for any reason to cause trouble. That evening, we got our first violation notice, a $75 fine for excessive moving materials, and of course the box was mentioned by name. Margaret had already made her move. It was like she was waging a personal war of paperwork against us. Grace didn't seem bothered, though. She just smiled quietly, like a cat ready to pounce. "Let me handle this," she said. I should have realized right then that my wife's past was way deeper than I knew. Over the next few weeks, Margaret's attacks kept coming. Grass a fraction too tall? Violation. Trash cans out for 5 extra minutes? Violation. Pots of flowers that weren't the approved shade of pink? You guessed it, violation. Each one came with a $75 fine, and each notice was a little more condescending than the last. Meanwhile, Margaret would corner people in the neighborhood, constantly reminding them of her late husband's military status. "My husband was a colonel," she'd say. "I know how this works. That woman next door, there's something off about her." She was obsessed with Grace in the box, and I had a feeling she didn't realize she was dealing with someone who had her own set of rules. One afternoon, when Margaret was inspecting her yard for the 3rd time, she stopped by the box. She sniffed the air like she was about to uncover some terrible secret. Grace didn't flinch. She just stayed calm and kept her distance. But one night, things took an unexpected turn. I found Grace outside, talking on the phone with a voice I didn't recognize. "Yes, sir. I can handle it." Hostile neighbor, but nothing I can't manage, she said in a tone that sounded more like a military officer than a suburban wife. I didn't know who she was talking to, but it didn't sound good. Margaret must have realized she was losing her grip, because the next thing she did was go after our flag. We had carefully put it out in front of the house, but suddenly we got another violation for it being non-standard. I was furious. "That's it," I said to Grace. "I'm going over there." She stopped me, her voice calm but firm. "No, I'll take care of this. Just trust me." I should have known right then that Grace was playing a much bigger game than I understood. That night, as I lay in bed, I started to wonder exactly what I had married into, and if Margaret had any idea she was picking a fight with someone far more dangerous than she realized. The final showdown came when Grace moved that same box from the garage, still with the same careful reverence. Margaret, with her phone already in hand, immediately started dialing 911. "There's someone here with stolen military property," she called out as police cars rolled up. The neighbors gathered around, eager for a scandal. Margaret, with her best "I told you so" attitude, stood at the front, but when Sheriff Harris stepped out of his patrol car, everything changed. He recognized Grace instantly. "Major Harris," he said, saluting her. "Good to see you again, ma'am." The crowd fell silent. Margaret went pale, like she had just seen a ghost. The neighbors, who had been avoiding us, suddenly started approaching Grace. They shook her hand and thanked her for her service. Margaret was left standing there, unable to say a word. But instead of backing down, Margaret kept escalating. That night, I found her outside cutting our sprinkler hose. The next morning, our garden was flooded, and she slapped us with another fine for damaging community property. Then, things got even crazier. Rocks were thrown through our car windows, followed by a fine for damaged vehicle aesthetics. It was so insane, I almost had a laugh. Almost. Then, out of nowhere, our neighbor George, who had kept quiet for years, came up to me. "Can I trust you?" he asked in a whisper. Turns out, the HOA had collected almost $100,000 in dues the previous year, but there was nothing to show for it. No new amenities, no repairs. Meanwhile, Margaret was posting pictures of her vacations and shopping sprees online, all paid for by the HOA fees. George was terrified, but Grace was on it. She called someone on the phone again, demanding a full financial audit. I started digging too. Using my background in design, I combed through public records and found something incredible. $73,000 had gone missing, disguised as community improvement projects, but when we checked the dates, they lined up with luxury vacations and spa days. It was all there. We collected our evidence and talked to neighbors who were too scared to speak up before. The stories came pouring in. Fake fines, threats, and intimidation from Margaret. Grace, calm and precise, built a case that would bring down any corrupt leader. When the emergency HOA meeting came, Margaret arrived, all confident with her own folder of accusations against us. But when Grace stood up, laid out the documents, and showed the numbers, the room was stunned. $90,000 in fees and only $17,000 actually spent. The rest was gone, all funneled into Margaret's personal expenses. The room erupted. People demanded answers. The sheriff arrived, and Margaret was led away in handcuffs. Turns out, she had been getting reports on her behavior for years: harassment, bullying, and intimidation. As the truth came out, Margaret's world crumbled. She had to sell everything to pay back the stolen money, and the worst part? She was completely alone. The neighbors had turned their backs on her. No one even acknowledged her anymore. Grace was offered the position of HOA president, but she turned it down. "True leadership isn't about controlling others," she said. "It's about helping them." The whole neighborhood changed after that. The rules were relaxed, the yard inspections stopped, and people actually started talking to each other again. 6 months later, I watched as Margaret's "for sale" sign went up, and the moving trucks cleared out her things. Grace and I hung our flag once more, this time with the help of some neighbors who had become real friends. We didn't just hang a flag. We hung a symbol of unity, of people standing together against a bully. And for the first time, I knew we had found a real home. So what do you think? Did Grace go too far, or was this the only way to stand up to someone like Margaret? Let me know in the comments below. And if you ever think the quiet ones aren't dangerous, remember, sometimes the person you're underestimating has already faced battles you couldn't imagine.